Welcome to Moon and Fire. I'm Emily Bailey, the founder of Whole and Wild, where I guide women back to their sacred wisdom through ritual and cyclical living. This is a podcast for women ready to remember their cycles, reclaim their radiant fire, and unleash their intuitive magic. I'm delighted to be in conversation today with Ali Rayfield, a coach who brings a beautiful, honest perspective on embracing both softness and power, feminine and masculine energies. What I love about Allie's approach is her willingness to share her own journey of transformation so openly, from a successful career in sales, where her value was tied to productivity and financial achievement, to her current path of reclaiming feminine wisdom while honoring her whole self. Allie describes herself as being in the middle of reclaiming her feminine wisdom live right now, and there's something so refreshing about that authenticity. She's also a mother navigating the profound shifts that come with that role. Allie, thank you so much for joining me in this sacred space today.
Thank you. That was so well. Yeah, I received that. It was so well said.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for, like I said, your authenticity is striking to me. Actually, before we dive deeper, I'd really love to just hear about your journey. You mentioned shifting from a sales career where you were on an upward trajectory for 15 years to a completely different path. Can you share more about that transformation and what brought it about?
Totally. Yeah, so when I graduated school, I got my first job and I was living on Long Island with my family and desperately trying to just like get out of my parents' house and make money and get to New York City. Like that was like my dream and what I always wanted to do. So that was kind of my mission as an my early 20s. And I got a good job and did that, moved in with my best friend and like couldn't have been, more excited about life and, really did that for a long time. Was, an account manager and then an individual salesperson. And then I became like what they call like a player coach, where I was like coaching, you know, junior people on my team. And then after 15 years, I had my like most senior role, which was in the C-suite for a San Francisco-based startup. Um, so like on the outside, all things were great. And I really did love it. It wasn't like it was unfulfilling. It just, um, I think where I got my value, and we talked a little bit about this, was from the accolades that I got from work. You know, I've always had a great family, but it wasn't that I was like putting effort into relationships. I was really just putting my effort into work. Um, and then like by design, the universe kind of shook things up for me. And, the marriage that I was in failed. And right when I was kind of getting my feet under me, my mom passed away suddenly. So there was like a lot to look at. And it was kind of the first time in my life that I was like, okay, what is life? And like, what am I doing here? And it's so short and it's long at the same time. So like I wanted to be super intentional about, the next phase.
Wow.
Uh, I was probably like 33, 35 around this time. So yeah, I actually, one of my old coworkers became a life coach and she was, telling me about it and offering me sessions and, kind of an exploratory call, and it couldn't have been better timing. And I realized like through hiring her is that like what I was doing at work was like coaching people and really, I wasn't connected to the industry anymore, the advertising industry. I was just really trying to make my employees and the people that I worked with like get exposure within the company and, gain confidence. So I realized, okay, wow, if I could do this for people, for leaders and, people going through the challenges at work, that would be like the golden job.
Yeah.
So long story, but that kind of like brought me and like introduced me to coaching and, where I was going.
Yeah, I love that. You mentioned that one of the things that feels most alive for you right now is this concept of polarity, specifically like soft and powerful, and the dance between the feminine and masculine energies. I actually talked a little bit about that in last week's podcast, but I'm curious, could you share how you came to recognize these polarities in yourself and why this exploration feels so significant right now?
Sure. A lot of it does have to do with work. Like I would say the polarities in my personality is that I have this softness and this kindness to myself, and then I do have this inner strength and, this powerful side too. And I first saw it come out at work, right? So like with my coworkers, and this is as a junior employee, but like I was like the people pleaser, the say yes to everything. I wanted, to be super liked, and there was that softness and that kindness, like you know, as a human.
Yeah.
And then when I would go into meetings, I would like super prepare and I would like channel this like power, this strength to like deal with like mostly men and like senior executives.
Mm.
Um, and it felt just like when I was on either side of it, like I knew it was part of my personality, but um, I quickly found that like I needed to be in the middle of both of those. Like I needed to embrace it, but I couldn't live on either side at all times.
Mm.
Because one is super masculine and one is super feminine. And, I think what I've learned over the years is that like when I can be in the middle, when I can, live with both in harmony, like that's when I am my best self. And so when I'm working with women, I'm trying to understand like what are their two ends of the spectrum? Like how can they kind of like sit in the middle, but embrace both sides of that because I think that is so important to know and to be connected to our patterns and kind of the duality of that.
Yeah. Have you seen that show up in your work as a coach?
Yeah. It's funny, even the word soft, like people don't like the word soft. So like when I describe this, like I usually say kind, right?
Mm.
Because um but I have seen it a little bit. I think that it's a newer thing when people look at the two ends of the spectrum of their personalities.
Mm.
Um, values comes up a lot like within those conversations. And before coaching, I had no idea what values are. Like I probably would have been like, yeah, my friends and family and, productivity or like things that I got value from. But um, now I feel like that is those components of our personality can also be, values that we believe strongly into.
Yeah. Will you share a little bit for our audience that might also not have a grid for the kind of values you're talking about? Just like maybe a 2-minute intro to what you mean.
Sure. Um, yeah, so like I said, like I don't think I really knew what values were. I would have just named it as um, some like morals. I think I would have like thought about like family morals and family values and that type of thing. Um, but what I like to describe and like to work with clients on is like, what are the really unique things that make you you? So, like, Emily, if you had a value of like exploration, like, and I had the same value, like, they would be totally different,
Mm.
right? So, what I know now is that, like, when we have these things that truly make us feel unique and authentic, like, those are the things that help us give us confidence. Those are the things that we want to live our life according to.
Mm.
So like exploration is one of mine. Like even living in the suburbs now and not New York City, like I try to explore different towns. I try to, go to see different places. So it's like this little micro way that I can tap into that value.
Yeah.
Um, so they don't have to kind of be cookie cutter. They can really be, um, one example that's coming to mind is one of my clients who I'll, obviously for confidentiality reasons, I won't say, much, but um, they had this value of it was a mountain, like a ski mountain, right? And, they called it Okemo. There's a northeast mountain here. It's called Okemo.
Oh, okay.
And it was when they had this moment of like beating everybody down the hill. And like that just meant something so powerful to her. And it was like something that she could channel but would never be like a value that you would see on a list, like patience or family or, environmentalism, things like that.
Yeah.
So love when people can really tap into their uniqueness.
Yeah, I love that. I think values is such a great place to talk about this, both and the masculine and feminine. Yeah, because sometimes we think that our values are conflicting, right? Like, well, I really value safety, but I also really value adventure. Well, you can actually value both of those
Right?
deeply and you can honor both at 100% in ways that use your creativity and use your resourcefulness, right? And sometimes I think we do honor one at the cost of another. And I love that that's how coaching can really unlock more options there for us too. Yeah, that's so great. Yeah, one of my favorite uh, examples from one of my clients' value names was dirt under my fingernails. But it represented like this like hard work feeling for them, and I just thought that was so unique as well. So yeah,
That is awesome. I
yeah,
love that.
yeah, that's good.
3-year-old, my mother-in-law has like this nail brush at her sink.
Hmm.
That the only one that uses it is my 3-year-old because she's the only one with like major dirt under her nails from playing outside
I love that. Yeah.
this week.
One thing that really resonated with me in your questionnaire was when you shared some moments of surrender. And I know you had mentioned your pregnancy journey and also your relationship with financial contribution. Would you be open to sharing a little bit about that and then maybe what these experiences have taught you about the relationship between surrender and power? And especially just thinking about the women who might be listening to this.
Totally. Um, yeah, these examples are ones that like came to mind when I think the language was like your sacred wisdom, right?
Mm,
Like the inner knowing. Um, and in both of these scenarios, so I'll tell you the one about my pregnancy first. So Um, my husband and I got married in 2020, like right before the pandemic,
wow.
literally January of 2020. So like our wedding was like the last event that people actually went to, which was,
Yeah.
now it's fun to reminisce on that. At the time, it was like wild. Um, and we were trying to get married, have a baby right away. And that whole year, I mean, obviously it was just like a stressful year. Um, Looking back, I'm like, oh, this was not supposed to happen that year. But at the
Mm,
time, it was like every single month I would be, super emotional that it wasn't happening. What was wrong with me? What could I eat? And it was just like trying to control the situation,
mm,
just kind of like that work energy, like that masculine energy of like, I have to control this piece. I
yeah.
wasn't letting anything happen to chance or like bringing in that feminine side. Um, so we were lucky enough the next year, 2021, um, where COVID was still around, but we were able to go to Hawaii and we went for an extended period of time. And it was like the best thing for, this scenario, but just, so lucky that we were able to do that. And I remember being on the beach and, after an emotional day, one where I also just found out a friend found out she was pregnant. I just like went to the beach and I just surrendered and I said like, okay, God or universe, I don't remember what I said at the time, but um, I said, we're going to have a beautiful life with or without a child and like it is in your hands. And
Mm,
I just like something shifted in me where I'm like, I can't let this, control me anymore. It was really, a huge thing. And I'm sure so many women that have had, a pregnancy journey or a difficulty can understand that. Um, and literally the next month I got pregnant. Like it
oh
was
my gosh.
crazy.
Ah, that's so beautiful, Allie. And I love what you just said about highlighting control too, because I think there's just such a dominant story in our Western culture, especially that says control equals strength. And it feels as you're sharing this story like you've rewritten
Hmm,
what strength means to you because of that story. Tell me, like, how would you define strength now?
such a good question. Um, I guess strength is like this inner knowing.
Mm,
Um, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a feeling. part of me is thinking of resilience. Part of me is thinking of like this inner knowing, trusting, like
Mm,
those things um, make me think of strength versus like the control factor or the toughness of it, right?
yeah.
There is kind of this, again, this duality of like, yeah, it's a soft strength. It's like
Mm,
it's a feeling, it's trusting, it's um yeah, I don't know if I'm really coming with the right words on this, but yeah, it really is a trusting and a knowing, and like that kind of leads you to be strong in situations, like hard
yeah.
situations.
Well, I love that you bring in knowing too, because I think when I hear that story even, um, like power and strength are so equated with like force sometimes, like making something happen, white knuckling.
Hmm.
And instead, there was just this release, but it wasn't a release of the desire. Like you still wanted that, but it was this like I love the words that you described in your surrender of um like basically I'm not gonna lose myself in this circumstance. Like I can't give my power away to whether I do or do not get pregnant. Like I am choosing to stay centered either way. And I love how you said that. Like, did you say either way we'll have a good life, or how did you say that?
Yeah, like either way, we're gonna have a beautiful life.
Yeah, like I get to live a beautiful life regardless of how this circumstance plays out, and I'm not going to outsource my power to an outcome. And I think like that surrendered power, like with that inner knowing you described, that does feel so strong to me as you describe it. It's so beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, you're making me think of like this version of strength in that story, which I never have before, but um it's almost like adjusting also, right? Like, the it happened that when I surrendered, I got pregnant, right? But like the alternative could have been like building a different life that was childless, right? And it's like that strength of being able to like, I mean, I'm sure that would have been devastating, right? Like truth told. Um, but it's almost funny thinking about even years before that when I was kind of in my work zone, like I told myself that I was focused on my career and not my family.
Mm,
And so it's like there's almost these stepping stones of like self-actualization.
sure. Yeah.
So it's like I had to realize like, okay, that story that I was telling myself where my career was more important than my family
Mm,
was the story at that time.
yeah.
Then I got to this place where, it's almost like light switch goes off. Okay, I'm ready to have a baby, like
Mhm.
let's have it, make it happen. But I had to come to the realization that I was going to be okay either way.
Mm. Yeah, that's so beautiful. That actually leads me to one thing that you said. You really, if you could choose a limiting belief to help women release, it's that we need to be perfect before we do something new. And I think this resonates with so many women I work with. Could you share how you've worked through this yourself and what's shifted as you've embraced imperfect action?
I mean, I still struggle with this.
Yeah.
You know,
Great.
day to day, I have all these ideas and then I don't take action because I might not have it perfect or I don't know exactly what, the outcome is going to be, or, I don't have the perfect degree to do a thing that I feel like you would need that. So, specifically now with my coaching work, I do a lot of like work with people and women on like calming their nervous system. But the
Mhm.
story that can jump in is like, I'm not a therapist. I don't have that degree, even though I've taken trainings and learned and do it myself. Again, there's things that trickle in. So anyway, to answer your question, um, yeah, what I've learned is that like the action creates the confidence in it, the doing, taking that first step, even if it's a small step, gathers information. So you either can decide, yeah, I want to continue on this way
Mm.
or pivot. But until we take that action, we just don't know. We just sit in the swirl.
Yeah. Ooh, that's a good way to say it. Sit in the swirl. Oh, yeah. Actually, one of the things that we do regularly on this podcast is just offer practices and rituals. And just connected to what you're saying, you talked about the power of believing tomorrow is a new day and as a significant mindset shift. It actually reminded me, I had a high school teacher who would stand out in the hallway as we would pass in between periods, and he would tell every student good morning, no matter what time of day it was. So even if it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon, he'd say good morning. And he wouldn't tell you why unless you really asked him. But it was his sort of like subliminal way of sowing this belief that like every moment is a new morning. It's a new opportunity to shift and show up how you want to, and which I didn't find out until the end of my high school time, but it was just so powerful to me. But yeah, I love even just that one phrase, tomorrow is a new day. How has it helped you navigate some challenges in your own life and business?
Oh my gosh, I love that story. That is so cool. What an insightful teacher.
Yeah.
It's almost leaving it up to the student to be curious and to have to inquire.
Hmm.
Imagine that was a fun social experiment for him to be like, all right, who's it going to be today? Who's going to ask me today?
Uh-huh.
Um, so yeah, so I mean, I don't have too many rituals. I always kind of like, um, I've always wanted to be a morning person. Cannot get that going. It's just it's not my jam. So what I've created is a nighttime ritual, which is exactly that, right? So we'll get into bed. My husband's usually asleep way before me. So, I'll get into bed. I have this clearing spray that my cousin gave me and didn't realize I would ever be using it. And, just so happened that I created this ritual with it where I spray it. I kind of like clear my energy from the day.
Mhm.
Um, and give gratitude for my health and my daughter, my husband, and our families,
Mhm.
and do tell myself like it is a new day, tomorrow's a new day. I want to like wake up refreshed and replenished. So it is like a ritual of clearing the day before and kind of entering into this new space of possibility and
Yeah.
um, just openness, right?
I love that. Yeah, I'm just feeling really inspired by that intentional, even just a quick clearing. Yeah, and like releasing and then trusting that, yeah, I'm gonna enter the new day. I'm not gonna drag the muck from yesterday into tomorrow, right? That's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. And it's so, I mean, I've never timed it, probably takes a minute or two, right? It's like, and I usually just even put my hand on my chest and my belly and like just soften into the bed. So it does feel like I'm giving myself a little bit of that, calmness uh,
Yeah.
to help me sleep and to, again, I think this was created out of like the desire to shift into a new day, but also knowing I'm not a morning person. Like it's hard to get up. It's hard to, start with like a bang, you know,
Yeah.
3-year-old and busy, getting out the door and all of that. So,
Hmm. Yeah, that's so good. Thank you.
mhm.
Um, yeah, one of the things that I wanted to come back to was you talked about live learning for you right now around like cycles and things, and you touched on something powerful when you were talking about what's possible when women honor their cyclical nature, this release of guilt and shame around decisions. Um, can you expand on how connecting to cycles can help create that kind of freedom?
Yeah, that's funny. I guess the one thing that's coming up is like, like the Irish guilt or the Italian guilt or like the Catholic guilt or like the things that I was like brought up with,
Yeah.
where, it was always about whether it was spoken or not. I can't even remember my parents saying those words of guilt, but it just felt like um
Mm,
even as an adult, I had to realize like, oh, I was making decisions based on like what my parents would think, even as an adult in my 30s and 40s,
mm,
where, and both my parents are, pretty easygoing, not too many rules. They were strict when I was younger, but it was never this, I never felt the guilt. Like it was super strong. I just kind of lived it with my decision making where
mm,
um, it was about really looking for validation from specifically my parents and then other people in my life too. So once I was able to like notice that that was a pattern, and I think, and it's funny when I work with clients and they're stuck on a decision, I'll ask them, like, who's coming to mind as you make this decision? And chances are it's like someone from their past who, especially with like being exposed, right? Some social media stuff, some
mm.
um, posting, like just little things that are part of our life. And without a doubt, someone creeps in that they weren't expecting to. And I can relate to that so well. Um, so that's kind of what I equate to like freedom in decision making is like really making decisions based on how we feel, how
Mm.
we know, going back to the authenticity of like, am I making this decision for me and what's best now for my family, or am I making this for someone else? And those never work well. We never feel really good about, what happens when we make those decisions.
Yeah, I love that. That's so good. Well, and I think like the having permission to be cyclical and not linear, right? Like there's
Mm,
so much permission when we stop believing both with our minds but also with our habits that we're supposed to be on all the time. And we start having permission to like, oh, actually that week of the month is actually my most productive in this sense. And this week of the month is when I'm generative internally, or whatever it is. And yeah, I think giving yourself permission to let yourself be where you really are, that's such a great, yeah, like marker or milestone of oh, I'm not holding guilt or shame any longer about not being on all the time or making this decision. And yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's really
I also what I've learned, even just about my decision making, is that I'll have a gut reaction, right? I'll have this instant reaction. And I used to not really listen to it. And, this kind of goes back to our intuition. And I never really knew what intuition was when I was living in that like masculine go, go, go world.
Mm,
And like that awareness of like, oh, I actually knew how I felt about this pretty quickly, but I gathered data to like rationalize it.
mm,
Or I didn't listen to it and I made a different decision. So it's like all through doing and experiencing that so I guess it's just about paying attention to like how connected are we to our patterns of decision making.
mm,
Um,
yeah.
one of my clients once said like she has to get to 51% of a decision and like then she's in. So it like wasn't even that far over the halfway point for her to be good with it.
I love that.
And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I wouldn't have thought about that as like a process, right? To like know your decision making process.
Yeah. That's so good. Well, I want to hit on this theme of confidence as well, because I know that that's something that is core to the work you're currently doing in the world. I love your emphasis on not needing huge leaps of faith, but rather experimenting with small shifts to build the confidence muscle. Tell me about confidence and what you want the world to know about, what you believe is possible in that area.
I think confidence is that inner knowing, right? It's that strength that is unique to every single human and
Mm,
different to every single human. So outward confidence, you know, is kind of like this tricky thing because we can fake it till we make it, but like inside we're just like feeling so exposed and vulnerable and like we don't know how to handle that. Um, so the work that I do with women is like helping them realize that like iterative pattern change and not these broad, huge leaps of faith is what builds confidence.
mm,
So it's experimentation, right? It's almost like you have a goal or you have a pattern that you want to break, or like you are trying to understand, why you're stuck. And it's like, okay, let's break it down. How can in the next week, how can you experiment with, you know, trying on, sometimes I say like trying on a new jacket, right? Like try on this new feeling, try on this new um, perspective and
yeah.
see how it shifts.
Mm,
So I always find that like these iterative changes lead up to transformation. Um,
mm,
if you've ever read the book Atomic Habits, that's what they talk, James Clear, I think it is, he talks
yeah.
about that where it's like, um, you don't need these, like, you can't climb the mountain until you take these smaller steps to even just like get to the mountain.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so good. And I think that just feels so much more approachable and accessible too. At least for me, I know sometimes I can put something off and put it off and put it off because I've made it feel like in order to step into that, just like you said earlier, right? In order to step into that, I need to be perfect almost, right? Like I need to have perfected fill in the blank as opposed to what if I start here? Like, what's here now that
Mm.
feels ready to grow? I love the word experiment too. I think that's such a good um there's a looseness about experimenting, right? Like, oh, it's almost playful,
Yeah.
right? Like instead of it being this like somber, well, what if I try this? Let's see. Yeah, I love that.
And some of it is even, the example that's just coming to mind is even like speaking up in a meeting, right? So there's so many women that, you know, have the thought and then
Mm.
it's almost like the lapse of time before they, either raise their hand in a Zoom meeting or speak up. Like there's this period of time that is, almost lost. And then they're like, oh, forget it. Right. Or, the things in that period of time is like, what if they asked this already? Right. Did I miss something? Is this a silly question? Should I know this? Right. Like it's amazing how in probably a 30-second period of time, we've asked ourselves or told ourselves, you know, 7 reasons why not to say the thing in a meeting.
Yeah.
And, sometimes it's about like blurting, right? Like I
Yeah.
know the skill of blurting with coaching, it like kind of works with meetings and speaking up to experiment, like just getting my voice in the room,
Yeah.
and sometimes it's about like instead of asking the question, saying, I have a question, right?
Yeah.
It almost gives you like a little bit of buffer time to like have the confidence to say that and then figure out what the hell you're going to say, what that question is going to be,
Right.
or, I have an opinion, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like these little ways to trick ourselves, into, all right, if I can't just say the question because I'm overthinking it, how do I get in the space
Mm.
um, easier to
Yeah.
experiment with that, new pattern, that new language or that new action?
Yeah, that's a great trick. Great tip. I love that. Ali, I know you have an upcoming confidence workshop on June 11th. Can you share a little bit about this offering and who might benefit from it?
Yes. Confidence work is what I've been doing kind of like behind the scenes with a lot of women. This is the first workshop that I'm kind of like bringing this to the world. So I'm really excited about it. It's taking like confidence from me to say like, okay, I've lived this, I've coached this, um, come to the workshop and learn, 4 ways to build your confidence. Um,
Mm,
so again, I'm using my own approach of iterative small things to learn in order to practice. So that's
mm.
what I'll be teaching at the workshop. It's June 11th, and the website is aliray.com/confidence if you're interested in joining.
Yeah, absolutely. Where can our listeners find you and learn more about your work?
Sure. So I'm on Instagram. Ali Ray Coaching is my handle. I also am on LinkedIn, Ali Rayfield. And I mentioned the aliray.com/confidence or aliray.com.
Awesome. Yay. Well, I'm so excited for your workshop. I'm definitely going to be there.
I'm so
And
excited about that.
yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to just say thank you so much for bringing your wisdom and your authentic presence to Moon and Fire today. Your journey of embracing both your soft and your powerful sides, of learning to surrender while finding your strength, those are both such, and everything in between that you've offered us today. There's such beautiful medicine for women who are navigating their own transformations. I'm really grateful for your openness and sharing these experiences with our community.
Thank you. I was so honored to be here today, and you're a great host. So I really appreciate just spending time with you.
Oh, thanks, Sally. For everyone else, we want to just say thank you for being here and remember the sacred cycles, reclaim your radiant fire, and unleash your intuitive magic. Thank you for being here, sacred woman. Until next time.